Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote.
Online voting is open.
Secretary Colvin, I'm a yes.
Thank you, Director Abraham. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Before we get to tonight's consent agenda, were there any questions that directors had as they reviewed this cycle bills that they wanted to share here?
I had a question.
Director Lingo?
In the current bills, there's a little over $400,000. Granted, $210,000 of it going to a single ed tech program or application. Are these single-use license or are they perpetual licenses?
I think we got that answer back to you late in the day on email, Director Lingo. Thanks for asking it here. Those are annual renewal costs on some of those. I think there was a couple things we separated out in that response. I was trying to pull it back up here while you were asking, and I was having trouble finding it.
Sorry.
But in general, on those, we had annual renewals. There was another question you'd asked about why Zello, one of those, could be paid from the SAVE fund, and that's because it's a career planning tool, so it's an allowable expense under SAVE. So that's why we could use that categorical fund there. And then the Imagine Learning is, you'd asked a question about those being yearly as well, but those are grade level licenses as part of the curriculum cycle. And so that is a part of the curriculum purchase there. And so one thing when we talk about those ed tech things that I think we want to be careful about too is that sometimes that's the only delivery method for curriculum providers anymore. There isn't a print option either. And so even if we didn't want to do the technology version, that would cause us to probably have to replan or think about is there a print provider even available? So some of those are for core instruction. Those are our core materials that go into that curriculum review cycle. Other ones of them could be add-ons. We do have to have a career planning tool required by the state. Again, that's the allowable expense under SAVE. So sorry to meander around the question there, but I hope that answered it.
Yeah, good.
Any additional questions? Are there items that directors want to pull from tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to policy primers. I know that we have not had a policy and governance meeting, but I don't know if Director Finch wanted to add anything.
It looks like this is the one time we need one. The primers are numerous and varied, so I'm going to kick it off to Superintendent Degner to maybe lead some discussion here.
Yeah, and probably ask the team to jump in if you have specific follow-up questions, guys. But you see a number, really these suggested changes came to us from the School Board Association in their packet. You also see a number of them that we're just saying are being reviewed and not asking for approval. A lot of that has to do with some of the Title IX ongoing litigation surrounding that, waiting for advice from legal counsel, as well as the chronic absenteeism. We continue to kind of wait for some further guidance from the state on that before we adopt policy. Also, 50109 and 09R1 works to clean up, I think, 5013. And I think Director Lingo had a good question about that today. If students don't reach the required number of the 1080 hours, would they all be considered chronically absent? The way some of that reads right now would be in the affirmative, but that's where 501.09 works to clean up some of that for us. And so I would say all districts are still trying to work through what that new chronic absenteeism piece is going to look like. And we're awaiting, further information from the state on that. I was trying to think if there's anything else of note. That's kind of maybe the general overview, and then if there's any specific questions, I'll either try to address those or ask a team member to address them. But the ones we're not asking you to approve later, that somewhat covers those that we have listed out there.
Do directors have any questions, comments? Director Lingo?
So if they're not set in stone yet, we're still waiting on advice from the state or whatever it may be. And from my reading of 501.3, it's 10% of 1080 hours, right? And if they state that the state states, I'm sorry, if the state comes back and tells us, yeah, those students are chronically absent and you need to, from my reading, contact the county attorney, is that a correct reading of the bill or an incorrect reading of the bill? How does that work?
Yes, I think this is what Superintendent Degner was talking about. It appears, and we haven't talked to anybody at the state, but that they're trying to tackle a couple of things with this. And we look back at the history. 501.3 is not new. If you remember back when the state gave districts the option to either count days or hours, that's really where this came from. And so we get this this policy every year to update whether we're going to do days or hours, and so that's where the 1080 comes from. That was really the purpose behind this policy. But now, as Director Lingo points out, there is also this part in here about the referral to the county attorney's office that has actually been in there since 2021, and it just hasn't been something that has been top of mind for districts. And Superintendent Degner talked about the chronic absenteeism. Well, actually, what 1080 is that baseline number of hours that all of our students go, and we build in extra hours into our calendar for snow days or things like that. Well, the way this reads is basically, or excuse me, could be read is that basically any student that came to us that missed one day of school last year, because we actually only ended up with like 1,084 hours in our calendar, should have been referred to the county attorney. That's not what this clearly means, and this isn't what it was put in place for. That's why Superintendent referred to policy 501.9, because that is where we find our flexibility in terms of how we are going to define chronic absenteeism, even as we have in the past, and how we're going forward. We want to take this to P&G so we can have some more in-depth conversation in terms of those changes in chronic absenteeism, from looking at it from an entire year to actually by the grading period. That's one of the large changes that's come to us this summer, and some of the information we were waiting on, which is why we didn't bring it to you this evening. But in terms of 501.3, you can't really lead it as a standalone policy. We think technically, yes, if the board wanted to approve this policy, the language that's going to be in 501.9 provides us the balance we need. But because they're not set in stone yet, Director Lingo, we could also modify this to provide some clarifying language so that we could define that what we're really talking about, which is what says in 501.9, is that when a student misses 10% or more of 1,080 hours, that's when we refer them to the county attorney. And so it's just not clear, and it's just bad language from the state, in all honesty, not the statute itself, but how the policy is written. It just has never been a focus before.
Any
I mean,
additional questions?
I'm not sure, I think that explanation might even been confusing, so I can
No,
understand.
It helps, and
okay.
I guess my fear is that this policy, even though it's not set right now by the time, because the law applies to the school year, right? Correct? Or
Correct.
So-
We have the guidance now from the state. We just didn't have it prior. And so we've received it here last week.
Okay.
This week. And so we've started to get that guidance. And so we can pull out all that together. So yes, but you're right. We are cutting it kind of close to the beginning of the school year to get that put forward.
Can I just clarify something? Is it 10% of the hours of the year, or is it 10% of the hours in a try?
Thank you.
Okay.
It's going to be, it was 10% of the year, but now it's going to be 10% of the grading period. And so we can't even say it's of the tribe, because our grading periods are different at our different levels.
Right,
So
okay.
when we put out a chart, it's going to distinguish it between between grade levels, between grading periods, so that we can put all that math out there so families see when they're going to get letters and what that means when they get one of those letters.
For one more question then,
Yep,
for
no.
the middle schools, will we be doing it by the quarter then, or by the semester? Okay.
By the quarter.
All right.
And again, I think this is why we wanted to move it to the work session. And because we're talking about it, but one of their changes is the state's no longer distinguishing between excused and unexcused absences. And so that will be a change as well. And so there are a number of different pieces that we're trying to put together in a way that's digestible for our families and easy to understand about how this is going to impact their school experience, but also allows us for making sure that we're tracking on the backside what we need to turn into the state for our obligations as a school district.
What would constitute as an excused absence under the current? I'm just, because I mean, for someone to
When
come
the
in.
parent calls in and excuses it for an
Okay.
illness or an appointment, or, one of our listed legitimate excuses. And unexcused means a kid just
Yeah.
missed and nobody called.
Okay,
Any additional questions or comments? All right, thank you. Next up are our discussion items, and the first item is the cell phone technology and artificial intelligence. We did meet as a board for a work session right before this, and before directors have an opportunity to share, out from that, I would allow Superintendent Degner to kick us off.
Thanks, President Malone. I think we wanted to most notably just have this listed on the agenda here this evening so the community knew we were touching base on it. Some of those conversations we'll have will probably be more robust in the work session format, and then follow-up summary here. And so tonight we talked about part one, talked about some of the data that was presented in there, talked about some potential areas of the book that were concerning or offensive to some people, but then I would say also talked about how this looks in our schools and some of the frustrations, that we've had and limited success in trying to do any type of regulation of phones and some of the struggles with that. We do have some opportunities for feedback that we'll be asking from our administrators, teachers, students, and parents coming up that'll inform some of those later conversations. The board plans to read part two for the next meeting on the 27th. In reference to the timeline we talked about last time we met, we'll be touching on this, not only this resource, some other resources were mentioned this evening in the work session, but we'll be talking about this agenda item as we move through the fall here, looking at a recommendation for late October for any potential policy changes. So we'd encourage people to listen to the work session so they can hear that full conversation and some of our thoughts on the topic as we go along. But even if we have it listed here in the regular meeting, I'd just remind people that there's a more in-depth conversation that's happened in the work session.
Thank you. I would open it up if any directors wanted to add anything. You don't have to, but I wanted to give that opportunity if anybody felt so inclined.
just more curious about the timeline of the survey rollout again and what the plans are there.
Yeah, per the timeline we presented at the last meeting, the administrator survey will start here in August and include in September. Then we moved, after that, it moves to the teacher survey, and then the last window is parents and students. We've gotten some requests to survey all district parents. I don't think we would probably survey all district students in some of the younger elementary grades, but on the original timeline that I presented, it was 6th through 12th grade parents and students. We might just do all parents in the district, and then keep that, for our secondary students to have the option to complete the survey too. But that's kind of the iteration. So those surveys we'd hope to have completed kind of late September, so we could talk about some of those results in the October meetings.
Thank you.
Will we see any of the survey questions as a board ahead of time? Just take a look at them.
You can if you want to. I'm not sure we'll be able to meet those timelines if you guys want to react to the survey questions
Just
or give
like-
feedback on those. I'm happy to share them with you when we go to distribute them, but if you want to input into what questions we asked beforehand, I think we'd want to revisit that timeline.
That's my only final comment would be, I would really like to see a comment section for qualitative data from the community to write their own thoughts and opinions.
And I think we have some of those included where they'll be able to provide some narrative response to. Yep.
All right.
Mike, just note, Director Lingo, that I was skirting with the idea of looking at individual questionnaire items before, and I was reminded, I think, by the superintendent, that they were not going to construct a perfect survey, and perhaps I wasn't going to help them to do that either. So.
All right.
I would just want to put out there, because I know some folks will watch this meeting and not necessarily tune into the work session, and the question that's going to be out there is, well, what are you doing, right? And I just want to put out that our work session tonight we did not get into the what are we going to do. I mean, I think we've all felt that that is the hard question to answer, is what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? But there's a feeling that was kind of across the board that there is an issue to be addressed, and it is a complicated issue, which is going to, give us a complicated response. And so it's going to take a little bit of work to get there. So if you're wondering what we're doing, we don't have that answer yet.
I would also add, for those watching or listening, I really appreciate getting the emails and the text messages, but the best way to make your viewpoint heard is to respond to the survey. I have a little folder on my email. I'm keeping all of everyone's emails. I'm reading your email, but when it comes down to it, I'm really going to look at our survey results that condenses and consolidates all those responses. So please don't think, well, I texted Lisa so the school board knows how I feel. They absolutely do not. So please, parents, students, staff, respond to the survey so that we can get a really good read.
And I would particularly encourage teachers and teachings and instructional staff to respond to the survey. So I'm really interested in what your viewpoints are.
Agreed. All right, thank you. Next up is our legislative priorities. Thank you to all directors taking part in the survey. As you remember from our last meeting, we decided that we would all just respond and pick the 4 top priorities, and the top 4 with the most votes would be the ones that Board Secretary Colvin would submit by the deadline to IASB. So those are preschool, teacher professional development, supplemental state aid, and mental health. I don't know if directors had any comments regarding those priorities. Okay. Hearing none, we can move on to the next one. Registration has opened up for the delegate assembly for the ISAB convention in November. So we should have a discussion on who will be the lucky winner of the 7 of us to attend the delegate assembly. That happens the Wednesday before the full convention. You're there from roughly about 8 o'clock in the morning until you're done. Sometimes you're done pretty quickly. Last year, I think we went until 2, I don't know, it was long. So
you have experience being the delegate.
Yes.
That's what I heard you say.
Yes, I do.
Well, I would nominate you.
That's a good point.
I am more than
I'm
happy
keeping my
to
mouth
do.
shut right now.
Yeah, no need to pull down the microphone, Director Lingo. Unless you were volunteering.
I'm only attending Thursday this year.
What's
so-
that?
I'm only attending Thursday this year, so
Okay.
I
right.
would concur with Director Williams. Yeah.
Thank you
I just,
for the vote of confidence. I am so thrilled to do it.
I just want to thank you for doing it, President Malone.
Yes, you
That's
you
all. I
guys
don't have
are
anything else
all
to add.
welcome. Yay.
And we owe you.
Next up, we'll take it to our action items. The first one is the resolution of intent to set the date for the public hearing of election instructional support levy renewal. Superintendent Degner, I know you wanted to.
Yeah, we're actually going to ask you to table this tonight and not take any action. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves here. This isn't something we're able to place on this November ballot, and so we're going to ask you to hold on this. We can put it back on the next agenda for further conversation if you'd like. Adam isn't able to be with us this evening. He's ill, but basically the board has two options, and you can have a board renewed instructional support levy that'll last for 5 years, or we can go out for an election, and if the community supports it, the 50% plus one, then it's a 10-year extension. And so it is getting time that we need to consider extending ours. But again, it can be extended with board action for 5 years, longer with the community vote. And so you can disregard what we have there for the November election and know that we'll have some more time to consider next steps for the district. But we would just ask you to table that for this evening.
And do we need to make a motion for that? No?
Could I ask,
It'd be probably best for him to do so.
Okay.
Yeah, just to table to a future date.
okay, before I make a motion, I'd like to ask Superintendent Degner, so if the election drought is not successful, then can the board still extend the levy for 5 years, or is it no levy then?
Yes, and that's a great question, Charlie, and one I want Adam to be here to give you the specific answers on. But as we've talked about it as a team, it appears that if we were to put it on that March ballot and it would fail, at this point we'd still be in good shape that the board could take option to still extend it. We probably wouldn't be able to have a second election opportunity with the time that's left, but if it did fail, I believe from what we've worked on, we would have time to take that board action. But again, I'd want him here to confirm that with you and for us to play out those dates one more time. But not being able to do in this November one, I know it changed some of our thinking on that. So really low risk with the board support of it, a little bit higher risk with of course, the election result, but that would be the safety net if we could make that timing work.
Thank you. Right.
So President Malone, could you accept a motion to table this item?
I second it.
All right, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up are the policy primers. Is there a motion?
What we're voting on doesn't include the 501.3, does it?
It does.
It does, there it is.
Yeah,
I would actually move to, given our discussion at the board table and that it may benefit through P&G, I would move to pull 501.3 from the packet of policy primers that we are approving tonight.
Second.
I second. I just want to double check if there's anything else that goes along with the 501.3 that we should be.
So Molly, Vice President Abraham, second.
Oh.
And additional questions, Director Lingo.
Is there anything else that we should be adding to 501.3 as part of it? Or is it good with just 501?
No, I think we're good.
Because you're not taking action on the other two this evening, so I think you're covered.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up, Director Liaison Report. I don't know if directors would like to highlight any of their activities. Now is the time. Feel free.
I did want to highlight our community partners who partnered together to put together the Ready Set School event that took place on Friday. Director Williams was there with her husband, and there were several other teachers in attendance that were helping out. It was just a really beautiful way to help, that our community came together to help some of our students. And nutrition was there as well, signing up our students for lunch. So it was a heartwarming event, and hope to see more of that in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Jane, for bringing that up. I was able to attend too for a 2-hour session, and it was a well-organized and very well attended distribution of backpacks and school supplies, as well as the other services that were offered there. Really commend United Way, League of Women Voters, and all the other organizations that were involved in putting this together. And I guess I take this opportunity to also note that there are other backpack or school supply distributions scheduled in the community before school starts.
Right, yeah. Right, and just to be complete, it was a neighborhood center, Salvation Army, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and United Way, and they had dental and vision screenings, haircuts, vaccinations, and school supplies.
Great.
Yeah.
And kids really enjoyed seeing those backpacks.
Oh, that's good.
They were really cool backpacks,
They
too.
were, they
They were all different, and Shields donated the backpacks and rolled up this big truck and literally dropped over 1,000 backpacks
That's
off.
awesome.
So it was a really cool thing.
Yeah. It's not on here, but again, I want to echo what President Brady Shutt said about the new teacher welcome this morning. And I want to give a special thanks to our human resource director, Nick Proud. He did an amazing job, and I quizzed him thoroughly on how ready are we with teacher positions, and we are all set to go. He worked diligently, and actually, I think you said you hired somebody, like a new teacher was hired yesterday, maybe, and they. Okay, see, that's what I'm saying. He's knocking it out. And what was really exciting to see and hear, one of our recent graduates from Liberty has returned to teach for us. He was part of the sophomore class when the building opened, and he's back as a teacher at Liberty. So that was pretty exciting to see. Anything else? Here, okay. Agenda setting. Oop, it went away, sorry. First up, it looks like policy and governance. Nope, sorry, work session. I'm all over the place, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think one thing you guys might want to talk about is how you'd like to handle that. We need to probably do P&G, a work session, and the regular meeting. You have some options that you could move up the start time at P&G. You could put the work session after the meeting, keep P&G at its normal time. But topics that we need to come back to are probably FMP 2.0 and the elementary configuration. And so I'm guessing those are, especially the elementary configuration conversation, is not going to be a super short one. So you want to have some sufficient time there. Of course, we're coming back to cell phones, technology, and AI. That could live in the regular agenda. Of course, part of this I can work out an agenda setting with Molly and Ruthina too, but just as you guys think about what's on that next agenda, those are three pretty big, hefty topics. I'll just keep rolling here, Ruthina, if that's okay. Another one we'll have opened, obviously, and had our first day of school by that point, but we'd like to give you a middle school update just about where things stand and how things are going with where we got construction to, and also how the schools are staffed and functioning after a couple days in. That could just be a back to school update too, and we'll make sure to point out middle schools. And then finally, some of those primer conversations will come back in P&G. If we think anything needs to even be bumped for action, we might also see that right away on the agenda then. And then finally, if you wanted to follow up on an instructional support levy conversation, we could do a better summary here with Adam as well. So those are the things I had on my list, but kind of have those three big topics just to think about how you want to space those or where you want to have those conversations that night.
I don't know how directors are feeling about that. I mean, I would suggest if people are up to it, would leave in policy and governance where they're at, their normal time, and we have our work session after the regular meeting to allow for time.
That would be my preference, just because I am booked with a different obligation from 5 to 6. So,
Okay.
so that I would prefer doing that so that because I would like to be at the work session.
Okay. Any other? I see head nods. All
I'm okay
right.
with that, yeah.
Okay.
And I have, before we leave this agenda item, I have two things I want to bring up, one for the work session, one for the P&G. Is that okay?
Okay.
For the work session of elementary configuration, I wonder if we could include some discussion, perhaps resolution of the request from the mayor of Coralville to changed the attendance areas for the, what's it called, Auburn Hills subdivision development.
Okay.
And then the second thing, for the policy and governance agenda, I'd like to see if there's would be interest to add to that a consideration of how revenue from advertising by entities outside the district is used and distributed in the district. This was brought up by email correspondence we've had over the last several weeks from, I think, Mr. Bennett Bork, I hope I've got the name right, who's asked some questions about how the advertising for Nike is at Liberty High School is, how the revenue or the gain from that advertisement is being handled. And I am interested in having some more general consideration of revenue from advertising handled in the district. I think it's in this, I believe our present policies are in the 700 series, but I'm not entirely clear that that's all of the policies that apply to external revenue sources or not, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can bring, there's no reason we can't bump that one out and just explain how we handle current revenue from advertising and talk about what the policy is and how it looks in practice. And then if you guys have questions or concerns or suggestions for edits or a change in approach, we can definitely consider that. So we'll just bump that one and include that on the P&G agenda that evening too.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to adjournment. Is there a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening and a great first day of school.